Okay, today we're going to talk about that we are creating the physical reality or the physical world around us. And to start off with this, I found an article on the internet. It was published this week in the journal called Nature. It's called Demonstration of Temporal Cloaking, in which they appear to have found out to by bending light they can make an event disappear, and they would like apply this in a military situation where a commando could come in and they would just be invisible for other people to see it, which I think maybe they might be mimicking bending of time, but which is it not, because they're bending light, but they're trying to change the physical appearance. And this goes back a long time ago, because the ninjas were doing this a long time ago, and they even go back maybe the 12th century, the 14th century. And the ninja training include their also invisibility, walking on water, and control over natural elements. And this article brings us right back at, okay, what do we see? This physical reality, is it real? How much of it is real, and how much are we creating, and how much can we indeed make invisible? Because I think in a military situation, it's not really it's really the event, something is happening, but like the enemy cannot see what's happening because they're bending their appearance. But it's playing with the idea of changing reality, physical reality.
Let me just say shortly that these technological approaches are actually trying to, I would say, mimic what the mind really does. So um, most of this science is a projection actually of what we are, um, and then trying to apply it to gadgetry and machines and actually things outside of us. But you see, all these thoughts are coming from inside our own minds, and these are actually I would call them projections of what we really do, and of course, what you get in this gadgetry is one could say like a caricature of what the true source is of, for instance, what you would call invisibility or the bending of space and time, or going beyond space and time travel, and all of these things. This is just you see, somehow we have gotten lost in developing technology and not people. But as in the example of the ninja or the samurai, these were capabilities that were developed in people. So it's the human being is the true technology, and we should be developing the human being. And that's not saying that we shouldn't be developing computers, but actually this is just a one could say like a property of the human mind body system. Actually, when you look in your surroundings, everything that you see is actually a symbol of self. So if you look in the animal kingdom, you would see like the birds can fly, and the dogs have this incredible ability to hear at normal lengths, and you have spiders can climb up walls, and you have all these. You see, most of the superhero abilities are mimicking capabilities in the animal kingdom, but it's actually that what we see in the animal kingdom is actually what we are. These are our abilities if we were to develop them. So it's very similarly what you see in these in what the technology is trying to develop is basically what we can do, and that's the interesting discussion. The interesting discussion is that you see, when we say that we actually time and space bends around a human being, then you would say that the human being could basically become invisible to the surrounding. And
But
that,
that is that bending space and time?
yes.
Because the event is still there. It's not like time
No,
traveling.
no, that's why it is actually a kind of a technological mimicry of the real thing. The real thing
Yeah.
would be going beyond space and time, or thus becoming invisible to the
Yeah.
surroundings. And in technology, you would get then a kind of approximation of the real thing, which would always remain technological and never, what I would call it, it would never be the real miracle.
No.
It would be a trick.
Right.
This is a trick to the eye. They're tricking the eye with doing something with the light around the event. But it's not the real thing. The real thing is truly going beyond space and time, truly becoming invisible to the surrounding.
Right.
You see, so it's actually the Bible has a scripture that talks about that, how the Antichrist would have incredible magic technology, but it is referred to as magic, and 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 not as the real miracle. And the whole idea of so understanding how we create the physical surrounding is that's getting into what you would call the real miracle, and not the high tech trick, because at some level technology, despite its extremely almost magical nature, remains a trick, and
Yeah, it's not magic really.
it's not a real magic exactly.
No.
It's a trick. It's a trick of the mind. And but what we do know, what we know of the mind is that so one, the real miracle is the mind, is the human being. And what we find, for instance, in the ninja tradition, the samurai, but also in the traditions of Buddha, or even in with Jesus, is that so these what we find here is a template to develop the human being towards the ability to transcend space and time. And there's a curriculum for that, of how to reach. It's like a stairway, and the higher you go up this stairway, the more you are able to, what I would call, inhabit paranormal circumstances on a commonplace basis. So what happens? So you see, so that's why we have to go back to the idea. This is what I wanted to present also, is that so what we call matter now is actually not matter. The whole idea of dividing matter and mind is actually one of the biggest mistakes of the Western mind. There is no matter and on the one hand and mind on the other. There is what we basically would be what we basically find, what there is basically is energy. And so you would find that what we call matter now would be mind like, and what we call mind would also be physical like, because we know that the mind can affect the physical and the physical can affect the mind. So they're not two separate categories. But in the Western mind, these two have been placed as two separate categories. And when you place them as separate categories, you fall under the illusion of their separation. You see, but if we start to look at the physical world as also mind-like, so as also one could call a third category, which Jung actually called it the psychoid, which he said is a third category between mind versus matter. But one would say then the mind the physical would then be more mind-like, and the mind would be more physical-like. And this is Jung came to coining this term because of his discovery of synchronicities and the discovery that the physical surrounding would behave very much as thoughts would in the mind. So someone would have a dream of a bee, and then whilst talking about that bee would actually appear outside of the window. This is the famous scarab bee synchronicity that Jung explains in his book. So what you find is then that the surrounding is actually the unconscious, and what we would call the unconscious in the dreams. And then, so in a very real sense, then we are in the self. So that self is able to behave mind-like. The surroundings will behave in the very same way our unconscious would behave in the dreams. And this is also the reason why it is so hard for us to realize that what is happening around us, the physical surrounding, is actually our creation. It's because it's the same way that we experience our dreams as behaving in completely autonomous ways to our conscious. You see, it's because what we now call mind is just like the surface of the self. And that little surface, the ego, experiences itself as separate both from the self interiorly and also the self exteriorly,
which is the physical world.
So this is where the Western mind, as it were, lost its way, because the surrounding is the self. And this is why I have been experiencing exactly what Jung found, is that the dreams would manifest outside of the dreams. So
in the physical world.
Yes, someone would be dreaming about being burglarized and vandalized, and then eventually this would truly happen outside of the dreams. But the self, the conscious mind, experiences itself separate from the unconscious, separate from the self, and separate from the collective unconscious, which is like the deeper level of the surrounding. And so the self does not realize that what is happening around him or herself is their own unconscious, correcting and compensating them. So that's why one of the first ways to start to develop this capability of being able to create more consciously in the surrounding with our minds is that we have to start to say that what is happening to us is our creation. And then, so because that's the unconscious that is correcting us, so that we have to like own the deeper levels of the self, which are the levels which encompass also the surrounding. And if you really pay very keen attention to what is happening around you, you will see that it is compensatory. The first level of this is that it's compensatory, and that it's trying to compensate the state that you are in. This is exactly what happens in the dreams. But the conscious level of the mind, what we call it in Jungian psychology, the conscious, doesn't want to see this. You see, so it's the surrounding you should see then as the deeper levels of the self. And then you understand when I say that what we now call matter is actually psyche, is mind. Similarly, in the deeper levels of the mind, you find the physics of the mind, you find the levels of the mind that is also physical. And that's why whatever is happening in the deeper levels of the mind is going to happen around you, in your body and in the world around you.
Yeah.
And that's why when we change the template in the self, so when you find that connection between the conscious and unconscious, or the yin and the yang, you change the nature of the stuff that we are made of and the surrounding.